Welcome to Redbeard Radio. I'm Brian Keith, and I did something unusual this last weekend. My wife on Thursday said, "What would have to be true for you to take an entire day off?" And by day off, she meant not writing, not working, not doing business at all. And I thought, And as I thought through what it would take to take one day off, I thought, well, what would it take to take 2 days off and actually not work the weekend at all? And what if I actually took Friday off? I just got back, and we're recording this on a Monday morning. It's my first call of the day. I just got back from 3 days of almost zero technology, almost complete information fasting. My phone was off since Thursday, and it was incredible. And as my wife says this morning, I like how you look when you're rested. Like many of you, taking a whole 3 days off is something pretty rare. The last time I did it may have been my honeymoon. And we're going to talk today about business and how to have a better connection between or better balance between what we're doing with business and some unexpected takes on work. And our guest to discuss all those ideas with us is Paul Millard. Welcome to the show, Paul.
Thanks, Brian. Excited to dive in.
Now, how impressed are you with me that I took an entire 3 days off my phone?
Yeah, definitely want to dig into that. It's a big topic I write about, and I think there's really some magic in that space when you're able to create it in terms of connecting to yourself, figuring out what work you're really drawn to, and sort of what where you're headed and what you want to be doing.
Well, let's talk about why I'm in the trap in the first place. A lot of us start our businesses to break free. And I own two companies, a marketing company, Redbeard Consulting, and then a lender training company, Lenders Online Training. And the staff that I have between those two companies and all the client companies on the Redbeard side that I work with over a dozen people who all need things. And I also do writing for basically all of my clients and both my companies, where I'm always behind, always. Where the amount of I really would like to be ahead by 3 months, and yet I never am. So I'm always I always got to do more. When I think about why am I working on Sundays, it's usually a couple hours, and it's usually to get a head start on the writing for the week, right? And then, but only this week. I'll be ahead by next weekend, Paul. And then next weekend shows up, and of course, you know what's happened. I'm not ahead. So I work on Sunday again. Why are we doing this to ourselves if we wanted freedom in the first place?
Yeah, so a little bit about my background. I worked for 10 years in strategy consulting, bounced around to different companies, was very much like trying to craft an impressive career and follow that path that so many people have written about and also left. And when I left, I think I felt this jolt of reality, which was, oh no, I left my job and now I have this like manager in my head. I have all these ideas about what I should be doing, all these insecurities about what if I don't have enough money, what if I don't, what if I don't succeed, what if I go broke, all these things. And at first, you just go crazy, right? You double down on working hard, you try to make money no matter what you're doing. And in the first 6 to 8 months, I did like prove to myself, okay, I can make money in consulting. And that's when I sort of asked the opposite question: what if I just didn't work?
Hmm.
So I actively created space, kind of what you did over this past weekend. I did it at first just indefinitely. I said, what if I just didn't pursue anything? And in that space was when I started creating a lot of the things that now make me feel so connected and alive, which is like my writing, my podcasting, and conversations with people around their relationship to work. And everything sort of flipped for me. And designing my life became an act of protecting those things. So it was like, how do I fund the ability to keep doing those things rather than just
Hmm.
going on this endless journey of like feeding my insecurities? What if I'm not enough? How do I make sure I'm successful? How do I make sure I keep capitalizing on every opportunity? So to answer your question, I think we're probably drawn to like keep working, keep doing these things because you're good at it, right? You probably have a strongly analytical mind. You're able to see the opportunities, and it feels silly to not pursue those things or not do those things.
Well, it's an ego thing, right? That when I have a client who is really good at what they do and they get to comment on something I've done for them and they say, wow, that was great. One of my clients is Dr. Philip Ovadia, who's a heart surgeon. He's done over 3,000 heart surgeries. And when I work on some project for him and he goes, "That was great." Like, yeah, here's this brilliant guy who does something that I can never do. And he's looking at what I'm doing and he's seeing excellence and he's acknowledging it. Wow, warm fuzzies, right? That pat on the back. And of course, there's also the money, but just that recognition. I want recognition. What's so wrong with that?
Well, look, the question I'd ask for you is you're saying you're behind, but that's sort of impossible because you don't work for anyone. Like, who is the manager that's telling you you're behind?
I think I am because I know that if I was far enough ahead, like let's take the podcast, for example. We're recording this in August of 2022. This episode might not go live until January or February of 2023 because in this project, I'm no longer behind. I used to be where I'd record an episode on a Wednesday and it would be edited on a Thursday and go live on a Tuesday. I lived like that for quite a while. And then I finally got to a place where I'm so far ahead. And even today, I'm recording 2.5 months. That's over a sixth of a year of content in one day. And I have the team and the processes built up where I will barely be involved. I might choose the title of the episode, maybe, but I have all these processes set up to where I'm really not behind on the podcast on the production side of things. Okay. On the writing side of things, like let's say it's writing a sales page for a new course. I want to be ahead. I want to say, hey, the project we're going to launch 3 months from now, all the writing is done. That would feel like I'm ahead of schedule. And so I guess the manager is my sense of wanting to be ahead so I can chill out like I'm with my podcast.
Yeah. What is it all for?
Ooh. Well, let's see. What's it all for? I help my clients grow their companies so that they can have a bigger impact for their customers and their customers' families. So when I write something, me being ahead of schedule with Dr. Avadia, let's say, and my writing for him directly leads to saving people's lives. The more ahead of schedule I am, the more relaxed I'll be, the higher quality work I'll do, and the more lives I will literally save through that work. At least that's the belief system that I'm operating in.
Yeah. And what did the 3 days of the past weekend tell you?
That I really suck at repairing boat axles, boat trailer axles. I spent my whole so I have my sailboat. I've been working on it all year, man. It's an old beater sailboat. Haven't had it on the water yet, and this is August 22nd as we're recording this, which if you know anything about the Seattle area, means the rainy days are almost here. And I thought, okay, if I'm not going to be in technology, and then I got the boat out on the water, but not quite, and then a wheel fell off the trailer, an axle just
Oh
broke.
no.
So thankfully, it broke in my yard. I am so blessed it was not on the road. So now I have a trailer, and I take the one axle off, replace that, discover all these rusty brakes. It was the whole weekend. I spent half of the last 3 days, each of those 3 days, working on the trailer in hot weather. It was great, but it's fixed. So what it told me is, even as it's uncomfortable, I love the doing stuff with my hands and fixing stuff. And what was also interesting is throughout the day, every day, my brain, my I love my brain, and it would just put tweets into my head. It would take some nice idea and turn it into a tweet or into a Twitter thread and then give it to me. And I wouldn't write it down because the deal I made to myself was I'm just not going to work. And originally it was just one day. And then I thought, what if I don't work for 2 days? Will the world end? Oh, what about 3 days? And my brain just kept on throwing this content at me saying, oh, you should do this. Oh, you should do that. And I would say, thank you for that nice idea. Not right now. And go back to to breaking some bolt underneath this boat trailer.
Yeah, and I think this is why these experiences are so powerful. In my first year, I had like this 2 month stretch where I didn't actively pursue work. I wasn't like going out there trying to find work. And eventually I ended up finding one project that they were coming after me. But in that space, I sort of started noticing all these things. It was like, oh, what do I really want at the deepest level? And what I really wanted was just sort of to connect and have some ability to express myself creatively. And this is why now, till this day, like I implemented this last year actually, which is taking every seventh week off.
Hmm.
So every seventh week, I take the entire week, 7 days, and I don't work. I
Wow.
don't do anything. The whole goal is to create space in my life to sort of keep reminding myself of who I am and what I'm really after. Reflect on things like what is enough. I try not to. I might write stuff down, or I might talk to people during the week if it's like very ad hoc. But I don't have anything on the calendar, no schedule. And over again, I find like in the subsequent 6 weeks, I'm way more energized. I'm way more connected to what I actually want to be doing. And I find that I'm having more fun and accomplishing more in those 6 weeks because I think a trap, especially in self employment, I don't know if this happens to you, is this low grade marginal creep of admin burden
Yep.
just creeps in because it sounds like you like most of the stuff you're doing. It's
Hmm.
just that the longer you do it, there's all this like technology creep, this like admin stuff, and it just creeps in. And you find like just to start your day, you need to do like 2 hours of this stuff. So what was happening is I wasn't shipping stuff like you with the writing, it was just piling up and it was just living in my head. So with these 6 weeks blocks, I sent out a letter to like a board of advisors at the beginning. These are like friends, supporters over the years. And it's just like, okay, in these 6 weeks, I'm going to do these things. And it's basically a processing mechanism for me to get those things out of my head, the things that emerge in that week of reflection. I'm like, oh crap, this is still in my head. I need to get it out. I need to put it on the page. I need to commit to it, or I need to like not commit to it. So I actually have like a list of things I'm not going to do anymore. I'm just going to kill that off, stop doing that. Because if you're not doing it after a while, you're just not going to do it.
Yeah. How does your intentional not doing anything relate to how much time you spend on your phone during those weeks off?
My I don't really have an issue with like being on my phone. Um I tend to like put it down and forget where it is. I
Huh.
also, for some reason, am able to like, I can like jump on Twitter and do like these threads and then completely disconnect and I feel like nothing. Um, I mostly use like Twitter as my social media platform, but mostly like pushing out. Like on my
Hmm.
computer, I block all the feeds and I don't really use it much. I use it on my phone sometimes, but mostly just like send out thoughts. And Twitter's my only goal with Twitter is to like make friends in real life. So if I stop making friends, I'll stop using it. Um, and underneath all this is basically me being willing to make less money. And that's the bottom line of it. Our default in the world, and this is a lot of what my book is around the default path. The default path is about more continuing a career, continuously working and buying into the belief that like you're supposed to sacrifice in the present for some payoff in the future. And my book is really an argument that it might be worth paying the costs, at least in the short term, to shift away from that and find the work you actually want to be doing in the moment. And this is kind of what I call like the real work of your life is like finding the work worth doing and then building your life around it such that you can have the right to continue to do it.
That is just fascinating. And I just bought your book. As you said, here's the one sentence version. Because I looked at the book sales page. I thought, that's interesting. You're like,
I probably
okay.
need to improve the book sales page. I
Well, what you just
would
said
have
is
written
like,
a better summary, but I had to write a book instead.
it's good to know what to focus on. Just that idea. Because as you're talking, I'm thinking, well, yeah, more is obviously the right answer. I just passed 20,000 downloads of the podcast. I want more.
Why?
I have X many. Did you say why?
Yeah, why?
Higher ROI from my energy. That any project I'm involved in, I want to get maximum results from it. And the podcast is specifically, it's both a way to make friends, which that's been fascinating. I've talked to some amazing people and built connections, like with our mutual friend John Robb, where opportunities have just opened up. I also want increased skills, and I feel that the metric of how many downloads is one way to measure, are you any good? And if I'm not good at something, I probably don't want to keep on doing it. I probably want to go find what I'm actually good at. I am not a good potter. I've made a few things out of ceramics in my life. None of them were very good. Now, I've also not invested dozens of hours, but if I were to invest dozens of hours and my bowls still looked like things you could not identify as bowls and my plates were not flat, I would want to stop trying to be a good potter, right? Because it just, I'm, there's things I could be good at. And if it's not this, then I don't want to do more of it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it does, but like, why do you have to be good at everything? Can't you just enjoy something for the sake of it? Like, I think podcasts is actually pretty interesting because the metrics are terrible, and it's not
Yeah.
actually clear that there is a link between downloads and quality. So, like, I imagine you have some sort of like intrinsic satisfaction from conversations like this, and that is
Yes.
probably what keeps you going. Like podcasts are a terrible medium to like make money and actually measure results. So there's got to be something deeper there.
Well, I do love the learning. Here's what I love, Paul. I love being in a room with people smarter than me. And almost every guest I have on here, we get to dive into something they've thought about more deeply. They've
Yeah.
had different and better experiences. They've had more success. They've done whatever it is. Like they've been married for 20 years, whatever it is. And they get to share something they've learned, some mistake they've made. And I just get to ask them questions. And the thing I hear from my guests more often than anything else is guests say, "You asked me new questions that got me to think about my thing in a way I'd not thought about it before." And every time I hear that, I light up. This idea that I get to help people think about things in a new way, and experts, not just people who are casual in a field, but the top of the line people are thinking about their topic in a new way. They're explaining it in a new way, and I got to help out with that. That lights me up. You can probably hear it in my voice.
Yeah, so that's your real answer. You're telling me it's about the metrics, but you just told me the real answer.
Hmm.
So that disconnect is really that is so fascinating to me. And I'm not like pushing you here. This is basically what happened to me too. I was noticing I had all these scripts running in my head about why I'm doing things. But when in that space, like shifting out of worker mode and just being in like leisure mode, like and leisure can be active um, as well as passive, and doing the things for the sake of themselves and sort of realizing, oh, this is like what it's all about. And I think that's the case for a lot of people who are self employed. It's just the case if you're smart and capable, you can make a ton of money and be seen as a successful person in full time employment, especially in the US. There's usually got to be something more. There's got to be that like intrinsic drive, that like drive to excellence, the craft of doing things, the creative impulse, all those sort of things.
Well, let me tell you a story. This last autumn, I did a whole bunch of live streams, streaming to Twitter and YouTube and wherever. And I had all kinds of guests, both business related guests, but also non business things. And I got, I think it was 6,000 views over the course of a month, something like that. But looking at how much elapsed time, like 6 weeks versus the podcast at that point for something like a year and a half or 2 years. And I thought, wow, I would get vastly more views if I focused on live streams on Twitter as opposed to podcasting. And then I thought, well, live streaming drains me. The being on video, the watching both the camera, but also other people's faces, but also managing a chat, just a whole different experience. Whereas with podcasting, I can do what I love, but I can batch it where I'm only recording now 1 day a month. And I love that because I get to have amazing conversations, but it doesn't run my life. When I first started podcasting, I would take people, they could book an interview whenever, oh, Monday through Friday, whenever is good for you, man. Right. And then I got to where, well, unless you're a very big name, I just hand you my link and yeah, here's when I'm next recording and I hope that it works out. But I'm not worried if it doesn't. If you can't make the time, it's fine. And so I get a podcast. I get all the joys of the podcasting, but I get it on my schedule. So I can manage my energy. I can tell you 10 episodes today. By the end of the day, I'm going to be non talkative, comatose, and it's going to be great because
Same.
I will know that I gave myself to you, dear listeners, and that I did my best over these 2.5 months of content to share with you some knowledge of these geniuses we walk among. And each episode, you're going to get one or two things where you, the listener, are going to go, huh, and you're going to think about it, and then your life's going to get better because you were inspired. And I'm going to sleep so good tonight knowing that I inspired you, but also now I get a rest for a month before I do this again. And like we are discussing with the whole 3 day weekend thing, I rest for a month and I'll probably do a couple of live streams in there, but I mostly won't do any public live content during that time. I'll just rest. And then in September, I'll do this again.
Yeah, this is interesting. So when I asked you why you do it, you said it was the ROI and you listed out the metrics immediately. And then you went on to tell me how you act why you really do it. And like basically what you're telling me is like it matters. It gives you some sort of joy and like value for the sake of itself. You learn and you design it into your life in a way that actually enables you to keep it going. And you like it can't be about the metrics because you found something that delivered better, which was the live stream. But you sort of ask the question of like, does this fit into my life? And you're like, no, I'm going to keep podcasting.
Well, the other metric is I use the podcast to promote my mastermind group for six-figure business owners called the Redbeard Accelerator. Anyone who's interested in that, it's at joinredbeard.com. And I'm particularly interested in creating content that is interesting and inspires the particular subset of people that are six-figure business owners that want to grow their companies. And through podcasting, I can deliver new content to them every day because we have an episode per week, but then we have social media content every day that gets released. So I can be providing constant inspiration without exhausting myself. Live streaming, I'm sure I could do a great live stream show, but to do the same level of a new one every week, it would just be draining to me. So I'm hoping I can go build that business, that part of one of my businesses that helps pays the bills, and then also in that inside that group, I have all the people in there. I'm helping them grow their businesses. So it's like it's how I can grow my membership without exhausting myself is part of it.
Yeah, I love that. Y- do you have a definition of enough? I'm sorry, I'm like turning the tables on you as like a fellow
No, it's
podcaster.
fantastic. The joke about this podcast is if it's not at least one embarrassing story per episode, it's not a Redbeard Radio podcast. Uh, Thankfully, none of my passwords are the whole, what was your mother's maiden name? Because otherwise, people listening to the podcast would know everything. Uh, yeah, enough. So here's parts of enough. Enough means that when my wife is planning our travel, that she is never considering what it costs. She's only considering the timing of how it fits into her lifestyle. Enough means that when I look at how many people have been, how many businesses I've helped, and how many of their clients I've helped live better lives that make an impact on their children down to the seventh generation, that I cannot count that high, that the impact is beyond anything I can properly imagine. I think that those two things are a pretty good metric. You got the monetary metric of a particular experience my wife has, and then you could fill a stadium full of the clients of my clients whose lives are better in something like my heart surgeon buddy. When I help grow that business, I'm literally saving people's lives, and their families get to have their loved ones around for longer. I want that level of impact, and I want it at scale.
That's awesome. It sounds like you've thought pretty deeply about all this stuff.
I've spent years, I've been in business for 10 years. And in those 10 years, I've worked with some clients where it was all about the money for me and for them. And I've done times where I've been working a lot of time working for hourly rates where it was very clearly, I'm doing this to get a thing. And then I finally got into a place where I work with people where I'm very aligned with their missions. Uh, where I just love their stories. One of the guys in my accelerator, uh, we had an earlier episode on this podcast with him, Clive Morrison, and he was a formerly incarcerated guy who is teaching people how to better automate their cleaning companies and on all kinds of local businesses. And you hear this guy's story. I think I did two episodes with him actually, Clive Morrison, and you think, wow, this guy is so incredible. And you hear his story, and you can't help but be inspired. And I think to any extent that I'm even 1% responsible for him winning even harder at life and at business, through him, I get to help a lot of people. And I get to inspire a lot of people to start companies by being 1% responsible for Clive and his success. And that just lights me up all day long.
I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. I have thought about it a lot about what success looks like because there's times where I've worked on projects where I've been doubtful that I'm actually making the world a better place. And I thought, did I just use my talents to make the world a worse place? And if it's a question mark, that's an answer.
I think that's the key. I think for me, when I was working in strategy consulting, I shifted early in my career. I loved it. And I loved it because I was learning, I was being challenged, I was learning to think deeper. I was able to learn actual tools and principles for how to present and synthesize and analyze information, which is so powerful in the world. But then as that learning sort of plateaued, I was being incentivized to basically just play the game, perform, and do a lot of stuff I couldn't really buy the impact on.
Hmm.
And a lot of what made me want to go self-employed is just to lower that ratio. You're always going to be, if you want to make money and you want to make a large amount of money in the US, eventually you're going to have to do some projects where it's just okay, I'm just doing a trade here and it's for money. But I just wanted to lower that a lot more than I was in my previous path. And self employment has been such a good vehicle for me to actually do that. So now I look at my schedule and I saw this this guy Ali Abdal shared this idea from William McCaskill this week. It's called the skip test. Look at your calendar and analyze all the things in your calendar. If you could skip it, but the result is perfect, everything is done, how many things would you skip?
Hmm.
And I realized there's not much in my calendar, things I do that I would actually skip because I actually enjoy them, right? Like conversations like this, if you could just skip this conversation and have the end product and finish recording, it'd feel really silly.
Yeah.
You'd probably be like that there's no point to actually do that because conversations have intrinsic value. They're meaningful usually. Um, so I love that test too for just figuring out how much of my day would be those things. Whereas when I was in my last consulting job, I probably would have skipped 95% of it. If I could just have it done and have all the research and analysis done, yeah, sure.
I'm thinking about everything I'm going to do this week. And there's two questions I can apply. One is, am I going to have fun doing this? And the second is, do I find meaning in it? And in mountain climbing, we call this types of fun, where type one fun is fun while you're doing it. Type two is fun, but not while you're doing it. It's only fun in the telling afterwards.
Yeah, the
And then
the
type
satisfaction.
type three fun is it's never fun, not now, not later. Type three fun involves things like dying or maiming injury. And the goal is to keep all your mountaineering in type one and type two fun and avoid type three fun. If you can do that, then all your stories and your memories will be, oh, that was so much fun as I was there suffering terribly. Or it was actually just fun. And I look at my week and I think, I still do work that I don't enjoy on a regular basis. I do work that I put off because I don't want to do it because it's hard or it's frustrating or I'm not expert at it. But 100% of my week this week, except for one admin thing that's related to business licensing, except for that, I find meaning in everything I do. So even the work that I don't like, it's still meaningful to me and it's still helping someone live a better life. And that has not always been the case.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think there's a cool idea from Daniel Kahneman. Do you know who Daniel Kahneman is?
Thinking fast and slow, yeah?
Yeah, he's the Nobel Prize researcher. He's done a lot of stuff. He used to research happiness, and he said, I quit studying happiness. I realized the way we talk about happiness, no one actually wants to be happy. Happiness, in his telling, was basically the stories we tell ourselves about what happened.
Hmm.
And that can be determined by a whole bunch of factors, including your just default affect, which could be driven by genetic factors. But what he said is it's the story we tell ourselves. And for some people, they are hard things that are painful, and it's how we remember them that really determines how happy we are. And given that, it's just very hard to say there is this one definition of happiness.
Hmm. Well, part of why I love podcasting is because I get to have conversations like this. And I get to, a week or two from now, something you said, Paul, will show up in my head and I'll go, huh. And I'll think about something you shared. Or I'll be reading the transcript once the episode comes out and I'll go, huh, right. And I'll get to go apply that to my life. Folks, if you've enjoyed Paul's thoughts, you might want to get the Pathless Path. That's his book at think-boundless.com. And you can also follow Paul at P_Millard on Twitter, Millerd. Any final thoughts, Paul, you want to share with folks?
The thing that fascinates me in today's world is Why do so many people feel uncomfortable about work? One thing I did starting in 2017 was having curiosity conversations with everyone. We're at an open slot in my calendar every Wednesday. Anyone could book a call with me. And I ended up having 300 to 400 calls over 5 years,
Wow.
accelerating during the pandemic when people were forced home. What I've discovered is that most people are uncomfortable or are unsettled with their relationship to work, but we live in a world in which it is better to pretend that that is not the case.
Hmm.
What I want people to know is that if you feel uncomfortable or weird about your relationship to work, you are actually normal.
Huh.
And there are ways to kind of interrogate and figure out, why does it feel so weird in the modern world? Why is there so much pressure? Why do we have so much pulling us and telling us that we need to be somebody in the world? We can learn from like people in history who have refactored their relationship to the things worth doing and finding those in our life.
I'm excited for your book to hit my doorstep on Wednesday, Paul. Thank you for being on the podcast.
Thank you. It was a pleasure to talk to you. Love what you're doing as well, especially the work you're doing with John. Really impactful for me.